As soon as I began to engage with the text of the Republic, I knew that just a passing read-through was going to be far from sufficient. Philosophy should be, in any case, read at least twice, once in general and once in detail, though it was clear even in the opening pages that this text would live up to its mighty reputation. My study of the great books of the Western world cannot afford a deep and detailed read-through of every work, or I shall never finish it. Along the way, it may be fruitful to pause and engage more fully with works that catch our interest, and the Republic is one such work. This mini-series will not attempt to be a comprehensive introduction to the text, nor will it be an academically rigorous appraisal of it. I lack the skill to do either. Instead, we will ask and answer the question, what does this text hold for the everyday person, and should it be widely read? In doing so, I hope to uncover some useful wisdom, not only pertaining to the political philosophy that we will regard, but in general as well. The Republic as a text comprises of 10 books, though they are more like chapters. The first 2 books of the text try to define the word justice. Before we begin to discuss the definitions attempted in the work, I thought it may be useful to briefly discuss why philosophers might seek definitions, and why, from what seems to be quite abstract, can we gain useful real-world insight. Metaphysically speaking, for Socrates and Plato, they wouldn't consider it possible for them to be just unless they had knowledge of what justice was. The definition is of the utmost importance then, as showing a clear knowledge of the thing to be achieved. We may ask, do we need to be so rigorous about it? Surely we all implicitly understand what justice is, even if we are unable to communicate it. We will see in this text that this can't quite be the case. On the one hand, we may find that we all have a different understanding of justice, in some way flawed or misguided, and on the other, we may find that a poor understanding of justice leads to appealing to its opposite, injustice. The determination of any definition is necessarily abstract, which can make the conversation difficult and frustrating. In our aspiration to improve our thinking, we must become comfortable with this task. Even if you do not see the practical value in seeking definition, you must be able to see the intellectual advantage in doing so. The process, in real life as it is in the text, is one of careful consideration, finding counterpoints and developing them further. Our discussion begins with the elderly, who are portrayed as inherently wise, Socrates saying, "There is nothing for my part I like better, Cephalus, than conversing with old men, for I regard them as travellers who have gone a journey which I too may have to go." In this discussion, Socrates is seeking answer to the question if life is hard at the end, or if it is easy. In the present time, it seems to me that respect for the elderly has diminished in direct relation to the pace of change in our time. It is well regarded now that the pace of progress, if we are to call it that, has accelerated. In past times, the world was much the same as a generation passed from young to adult to aged. Now, our elderly appear greatly out of touch, and for that we diminish them. As Socrates says, they have travelled a road that we too will journey. Despite the rapid technological change, much of the trials and tribulations of life are universal and unchanging. Their wisdom in this regard is still valuable and should be honoured. We may fear the process of aging. The end of life poses that ultimate question, and may be encompassed in protracted suffering from chronic illness. There is little hope that aging may be a good thing, and certainly we hear very little to that effect. Cephalus offers an alternate message. As we age, we rid ourselves of many of the passions of life that cause difficulty. We may reframe the loss of certain natures of our philosophy as bringing us closer to serenity rather than closer to death. The discussion leads to the consideration of how one has lived their life, which becomes a natural segue to the definition of justice. The text is more detailed than I could possibly do justice to in this video, but I thought it may be useful to look at some of the attempted definitions and their refutions. In doing so, we may learn something about how to conduct inquiry into our own beliefs. The initial attempt, at first blush, appears sound enough. Justice is speaking truth and paying your debts. Consider the following case. If our friend comes to us and gives us a gun and says, "Please look after this for me," then we shall, because he is our friend, local laws aside. If he then returns in a fit of rage and asks for it back, is it just for us to do so? In the giving back of the weapon, we cause injury to our friend. Clearly we use it at that point to do something stupid. Here we are introduced to the main tool of our inquiry, this thrust and parry of ideas and refutions. Gain better understanding, we state what we think, someone more knowledgeable refutes it, and then we continue again with another attempt. Though of course, we see the advantage of having a teacher in this process, there is no reason we cannot attempt to generate our own counter-arguments to our beliefs. If we do not test our beliefs, then they simply become dogma. Not every counter-argument presented is entirely convincing, and we may find Socrates' partners at times overly agreeable. Socrates states, "Is not he who can best strike a blow in a boxing match or in any kind of fighting best able to ward off a blow?" And I don't see that one follows from the other. Consider a football team. The best striker who scores the most goals is not the best able to ward off goals. Even where the dialogue presents agreement, we should remain open to our own analysis. We may continue in our attempt to define justice by appealing to the nature of good and evil. For example, we could say that justice was doing good to good people and evil to evil people. The fatal flaw may be immediately apparent. How are we to judge who is good and who is evil? And are we reliable in this regard? Socrates thought not. Men act in their own best interest, not along the lines of good and evil. Considering the behaviour of men acting in their best interest becomes the main focus of the end of Book 1 and much of Book 2. Glaucon deliberately strongmans the argument that injustice is most profitable, and is imploring Socrates to prove him wrong for everybody's mutual benefit. Through the story of a magical ring that turns men invisible, which sounds very familiar, it is considered that men will act in an unjust way if they are sure there is no consequence, as is the case when they are invisible. It is only their relationship to consequence that prevents them. Consequence, the justice, is what brings unity to men and the individual. The natural profit of injustice without consequence breeds disunity. Though this definition of justice does not yet seem sufficient, consider the co-conspiring band of marauders. Even though their action is to rob and to pillage, for the group to function there must be some justice in place. A group of pure evil would be unable to cooperate. Can we accept a definition of justice which would mark these morally deplorable actions as the actions of men acting justly to one another? It seems that there must be some higher standard, some other dictator of justice which acts as the moral bedrock, be it God or some other force. Religion has many valid criticisms, though it is now occurring to many people that the growing atheism in our countries may have thrown the moral compass out with the bathwater. One common argument I've heard for Christianity is that God acts as the watchful overseer, preventing the believer from sin. Though far too many historical examples exist to show that this is no perfect control on human misbehaviour, I've often wondered if there may be something to this argument. The rise of so-called cultural Christianity is somewhat of a response to this growing concern. Socrates suggests that to discover the nature of justice, we should look to what makes the state just, and then work back to the individual. In doing so, he proposes that they build a fictional state that works in perfect harmony. And they construct such a state with its many people and workers, and then they ask, where is justice then found? The answer is that justice must be what governs the interaction between those people, that which moves them towards the common cause. The state is defined in the text as the organisation of people such that they are able to achieve desires that they have, that they are unable to achieve self-sufficiently. This seems, at least to me, a decent definition. However, in the constructing of the state, they go on to say that a state must be luxurious. It isn't enough for the state to provide the necessities for existence. It must also provide comfort. It is the desire for these extra comforts that cause a state to outstrip what is available to it, turn to war and conflict to gain more. I can't help but wonder as to why we must suppose that this is desirable. Would an ideal state not enable a people who have just enough to be content, avoiding in the process the horrors of warfare and the greed of resource exploitation? Socrates states that they must add the luxuries so that enough people are willing to be part of the state. And this is true. Most people are unwilling to live simply. We have now built large global institutions and societies that aim to avoid all-out global warfare. The main crux of this attempt, as far as I can tell, depends on the interdependent global economy. Each country needs each other country to produce and participate, a unifying force that prevents conflict. However, this too avoids this essential question. We have not yet succeeded in creating a society that is comfortable within the limits of what it has. We continue, as Socrates has here, in defining our future with the assumption of unlimited resources and luxury potential. While I do not think that we should return to eating gruel and wearing potato sacks, we shouldn't give up on the seeking of an answer on how to construct a society that is simpler in its desires. In doing so, we may find that each community already has all that it needs. Even this extended discussion of the first two books of the Republic does not cover all of the ideas that are raised in the text. To do so would require hours, and we are only 20% of the way into the work. It is rare that any idea or topic is as simple as our naive first impression, and this should give us pause. Before we comment or make a decision, it may be worth a more interrogating look, one where we do not begin with the assumption of what the right answer is. If we were all able to more clinically analyse our beliefs, as Socrates is able to, then we surely would be better human beings. And we too must contend with the idea that we are not all good. A present theme through the opening books is that men are naturally inclined to injustice, because that is what is most profitable to them. I am reminded of the words of Zolsenstein: the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of this work and sharing this more detailed exploration of it with you. I've included a link to a free translation in the description. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Harry Smith, and this is Pages to Practice.